Okay, I'd like to call the regular council meeting of November the 23rd to order. And first on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, and it's amended to include 6.5. On table, Lise,
So
yes? Seconder, all in favor? Carried. Adoption of the minutes?
Move adoption.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
So seconded.
Carried. Next, the council received the delegation from Dave Millen, Stokum Falls Legacy Project regarding destination of Stolen Falls as a recreation area for public use.
Move delegation.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Hello, Dave. Welcome.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. I'll get into this right away. Rachel, I think, is going to put up the pictures for me so we could put the first photo up, if she could. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present this information on behalf of the many concerned citizens of the Comox Valley. I wish to make it clear at the outset that I do not support either the Comox Valley Regional District or 3L Developments in their undertakings and actions regarding the use of the land we are discussing. Next photograph, please. I've lived in the Comox Valley for almost 60 years and I've watched and fully understand how Stoughton Falls and its pristine surroundings have grown to represent a significant part of what makes the Comox Valley one of the best places to call home. I also know how easily we can lose valuable green space if we are not diligent in protecting them. Next photo. Along the Puntledge River from the Air Park Walkway up to the Comox Lake, including where Browns River meets the Puntledge on the 3L property, needs to be protected, similar to the Galloping Goose Trail in the Victoria area. In the regional growth strategy, its vision statement on the future of the region over a 20-year time frame fully identifies a major goal is to protect, steward, and enhancing the health of the natural environment and ecological connections. Next photo. The owner of the property being discussed has over the years paid out thousands of dollars in taxes, security, and presentations in unproductive negotiations with the regional district. I'm not here to debate the shortcomings or merits of those negotiations, but at some point it is reasonable to expect this property owner will want to recuperate some of his costs by logging the area or pulling gravel out. This would leave a potential repeat of what occurred in recent years on the Browns River, where what had been a pristine area was logged and scarred right up to the Medicine Bowls, or even worse, the Pearl Lake scenario located at the headwaters of the Oyster River. And Rachel, that's that satellite picture, photo 7, that one right there. And that picture is an old satellite picture. It is even worse. And I actually flew over that probably just less than a month ago. And it is really sad to look down on that. In 1886, the city of Vancouver leased Stanley Park from the Defense Department and 2 years later acquired it. I think you would agree that the Vancouver City Council of the day showed vision in acquiring this 1,001 acre park for future generations. Stanley Park is today an undisputed world-renowned icon of British Columbia. We have a responsibility and obligation to future generations to ensure Stoughton Falls becomes a park for all those to enjoy in perpetuity. And that's photo number 5, Rachel. A workable solution needs to be found. The question is, will time be a friend or an enemy in this matter? We can go to photo 6 there. And this, everybody, I've tried to, this is a satellite shot, needless to say, and Cumberland's sort of right in this, right where it says Cumberland. You follow up the river and you can see all the parks that are coming along. And I didn't realize that we had a big ecological reserve on Comox Lake, which is really interesting. But right smack in the middle of all of that beautiful greenway is Stoughton Falls. So it's a concern, and groups that represent and support fish and game, hiking, walking groups, salmon enhancement, mountain biking, paleontology. And remember, this is where our world famous Elasmosaurus skeleton was found. And recreations of all type agree in principle that productive negotiations and agreement with all parties without prejudice is vital to secure and protect this recreational corridor. Our friend Ruth Masters would have championed this effort and would no doubt be extremely disappointed in the loss of this green space. And the last photo there, Rachel, if you could. At this time, we encourage council to consider a motion to agree in principle to explore ideas, alternatives, and options to preserve this legacy piece of property at Stoughton Falls for future generations as identified as a major goal in the regional growth strategy. You as mayor and council have representation on the Comox Valley Regional District Board and have the unique ability, opportunity, and obligation to remember as the individuals with the vision who did the right thing. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have of me.
Thank you very much, Dave. Very well done. Any members of council have any questions? Unfortunately, I can't see it at the present. There you go. Does someone have a question? No? Councillor Brown?
Thanks so much, Dave, for that. I wonder, have you had any conversations with Mr. Dukovic at this point?
No, not personally. I'm trying to take a neutral ground and go right down the middle of the road here. These discussions and this, we've all read about it in the paper for almost the last 14 years. And it just scares me, and it's scaring a lot of other people. There's got to be a way to make this work that's going to work for everybody. And I don't have all the answers. I would just encourage council to ask the regional district and all parties, the whole Comox Valley, to put together a working group to come to a workable solution so that we don't lose this. And it's such a unique area. And like I say, having lived here for 60 years, I had a lot of really positive memories swimming up there and using the area. And all the development that is happened through the years, all the way up the Puntledge, it's remarkable. And I know Cumberland I've got friends in Ottawa that can't get out here fast enough to go mountain biking. And, 20 years ago, who would have ever thought that would have been the draw in Cumberland? But it's just changed everything. And I think we just have to keep building on that. But I'd like to see that whole area protected in that corridor down the river.
Yeah, I think you're right with the increased pressures too of everyone kind of flocking here this summer, and the necessity for us to be outside as much as possible. All of those recreation areas are of utmost importance to us. So wholeheartedly support it.
Appreciate that.
David, how big of an area are you actually talking about?
Well, what is it? Riparian zones. I'm learning all these things here as you go along. I knew that when you log an area, you got to stay so far away from the river. And I don't even have at hand how much property 3L Development has there, but I know he's prepared to donate a major portion of it if he can negotiate some portion of what he wants to do with it. And it'd be nice to say, oh yeah, we'll just go buy all of the property. Well, I know you folks in Cumberland have been trying to buy your forest area, and it's a tough go. I mean, people have only got so much money, but as our community is growing, and very quickly these days, as we're all well aware, it just became more and more important to find a workable solution for all parties.
You're absolutely right. It is a very, well, they call it the jewel. Did you not?
Yes.
Yes. And I think we all realize that.
I think it was Councillor Brown mentioned, with COVID this last summer, nobody could go near that area. And it was just, it was such a shame because everybody was looking for some place to go outside that was safe and social distancing and all the rest of that. So it just brings it more to the forefront. That's all.
Okay. Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, I think it's just, it's really a difficult situation. I think it's, it goes back a long time to when the province gave away so much of what was formerly the commons, and especially with this area, even the riverbed itself is owned by 3L. So it's just a really unfortunate situation for us as community and local government. I think, the regional district is doing their best to move toward watershed production and sort of focusing around Comox Lake itself. But, we have limited resources. And so, we would rely heavily on the landowner to donate the land to the region, because, we, unless, a community group comes up with a whole bunch of money, that an acquisition is not likely to happen. So, it's a very tough spot. I think we all want to protect as much riparian area as we can. But unfortunately, a lot of that decision making is in the hands of private owners.
No, I hear what you're saying, and I just think that if we formed a group with all the communities involved and sat down at the table and worked this out to some satisfaction of all parties concerned, I think it could be done. But it's such a unique situation. I'm sure you're all well aware of it, and I found out, and having been in the insurance business for almost 35 years, when you own the river bottom, if somebody's in the river and they twist their ankle, you could be potentially sued. And that was part and parcel of the closing of the area. I mean, it all, and you wonder back, so many people have lived here a long time, say, well, we always used to swim up there. But until you get your head around that, when he bought, and 3L Developments bought the property, it included the river bottom, and that goes back over 100 years from when they built the dam. The people that put the dam in were given rights to the river bottom, which is, you'd never get that today, of course. But that's a stumbling block that's in the way, and we have to secure that somehow or another. And I think that there's enough smart people in this community that we could put our heads together and work something out before this area is destroyed. And I didn't have any satellite pictures of the medicine bowls, but the picture you saw of Pearl Lake, there was negotiations going on there with a major forest company, and that's the headwaters of the Oyster River. Thus, it's called Pearl Lake. There was negotiations going on with the forestry company, to be unnamed at this point in time, and another group of concerned people. And they said, yeah, sure, we'll give you that area around Pearl Lake in exchange for this. And they couldn't come to an agreement. So the forestry company went in and just logged the place. And like I say, it looks a lot worse than that satellite picture. And I would just be heartbroken to see the Stoughton Falls area wind up looking like that.
Well, thank you very much, Dave, for your information and your request. And as you know, we will give you a decision at our next council meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good night.
Good
Thanks a lot,
night.
Dave.
Next, that council received the correspondence from the Cumberland Business Association regarding holiday season help.
Member C.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. And there's a lot of requests in this letter to us. Some of it is already in process, but I think Kaylin would be able to answer some of the questions here, or members of council, if you have questions. He's been our go-between between the BA and council. So please, Kaylin, do you want to comment first, or you want questions first?
Maybe I'll comment if that's all right, Your Worship, and then that way maybe I can preempt some of the questions.
Please.
A lot of what that's in there, the small stuff we're currently working on, administrative tasks, supporting them with the printing of flyers and stuff like that is work in progress. Part of the idea as well is with these tents in the downtown core, and talking to Kevin, concerned about the expediency here. We're about a week away from the beginning of December, and what's the best mechanism for us to support them in this without creating a whole bunch of cost and time. And so we're exploring things like a partnership so that we don't have to go through the whole permitting process. We can swallow up some of the insurance requirements and contribute in other ways like that. And the BA and us would be a partnership in this event, and it would kind of allow us to expedite this. And so that's just a matter of signing an agreement with them. I just want to highlight as well how great it is to have a BA now, because this type of relationship is now possible. Before, when there was a bunch of individual businesses looking to do these things, it was much more challenging. But with a non-for-profit BA, so I want to look at this opportunity here with this little thing just to create some spaces and support what they want to do. But I think it's also representative of a bigger thing that we want to move on to with the BA, and a bigger agreement about how we do events and how do we expedite these processes. What is my role in supporting them? What responsibilities they lie on. So this sort of mirrors a bigger sort of MOU or type of letter of working agreement what we want to create with the BA. But for now, we're very much in support of this. Certainly for the month of December, looking at opportunities both within our existing event budget that we had for special events this year to see if there's not a way that we can contribute financially. And then of course, if there's opportunities beyond February or January when we want to continue these types of things with other funding that's available to us, once we have some parameters on how we want to spend it, potentially this is something that we can continue to contribute in keeping these tents within the village square. But for the month of December, I think we have a clear plan forward on figure out how to do it.
Okay. Any questions from members of council? Councillor Brown?
I just wanted to raise the issue of the snowflakes, and that we are unable to post those on the BC Hydro polls anymore because of a change in policy by BC Hydro. I don't think the community's aware of that, and they're expecting our snowflakes. And so it's important for us to let them know that that is beyond our control, that it's not that we don't want to put the snowflakes up, but we are no longer allowed, and we don't have alternative posts to put them up on right now. I understand there's a conversation happening around what to do with them and how we can use them because they were quite lovely. So I'm wondering if there's something we can do around the lights. And also I like the idea of the banner, but I'm wondering about timing, whether that's even something we can get up in time to have any significant effect. But I think, a festive seasonal banner with shop local would be awesome if we can do that quickly. Just wanted to raise this.
Thanks, Councillor Brown. I forgot about to mention the lights, and that we have one of the ideas put forward by the BA was, can we use maybe some of them in Village Square? Instead of, and it's unfortunate that we can't. I've talked to Gavin in the Public Works group, hanging them in Village Square at this time of year with they don't have room in their work plan or the budget to do it as Public Works. It also requires wiring and special installation. I've moved this conversation down the road with the BA as well. This is a type of infrastructure of little communities like ours, like Ladysmith, who've risen, working in partnership between the municipality and the business association, able to provide this type of infrastructure. So this is something that I put on our list with the BA to talk about, to target grant funding, ICE-T and others, is that we provide this type of infrastructure, both for Christmas lights, both for banners, for signs, for all the types of event things that we do in town. I think it would be a wonderful fit.
Yeah.
I also have the old Chamber of Commerce banner, Christmas banner. So I've offered that to the BA to see if we can't simply just recover it.
Yeah.
Instead of having to create a whole new one. So we're working on that as well.
One of the suggestions earlier was to talk to the arts community about the snowflakes and see if they could come up with additional ways of displaying them instead of hanging them, like put them into some kind of ground cover apparatus or something. I don't know, but we shouldn't ignore the art community to be involved in some of this, because they have some wonderful ideas of how we could use these snowflakes.
No, absolutely. You're right, Your Worship. And through the chair, I think we could talk to the BA about maybe mounting them on the buildings over time, right? And then if each building kind of was a host of something, then maybe that's something where we can attach them. But again, that takes time. I don't think we're going to have enough runway for this year, but certainly good ideas moving forward on how we can do these things. Again, right, I would also stress with the BA having a bit more of a formality and agreement between us. Hopefully we can start on these things in September or October.
Anyone else have a question? Yes, Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, so in the letter, it talked about the mask policy. So I guess that's been taken care of by the provincial health order.
Ahead of their time.
Yeah. And then it talks about creating a web presence on the village's website to raise awareness for the holiday campaign. Are we able to do something like that?
And that's a bit more challenging. We're certainly happy using our reach, which is not very big, right, through our website. Our website is really focused on servicing the locals here. And certainly, but watching that fine line between business and public health, and I'm very comfortable sharing their public health messaging, wearing masks, how to operate, how to, how to within our stores and stuff like that. So we'll continue to do that. I'm always a little hesitant to stop short to do the full marketing campaign of the shop, but we'll certainly do I Love Cumberland hashtag in the local and support the public health messaging and stuff like that as much as we can. But I'm being mindful as well of our community charter and limits that we have on supporting those types of things. So, but certainly very proud of them with a public health message. It came out before Dr. Bonnie Henry did, and I've been very supportive in them of thinking about when we open up for business that we're creating an environment where people feel safe in our community, which is the best thing we can do for their businesses if we're looked at as a place to go shopping where you're comfortable. And I think they've done a really good job with that.
Okay. Any other questions? There is a motion if somebody would like to read it.
That council refer the correspondence from the Cumberland Business Association regarding holiday season help to staff for reply, and that council directs staff to bring forward options to formalize the working relationship between the village and the Cumberland Business Association.
Seconder?
Second.
All in favor? Carried. That council receive the correspondence from the town of Comox requesting repeal of decision regarding statutory holiday closures at the Comox Valley Waste Management Center.
Move receipt.
Second. All in favor? Carried. I think the letter is very informative and it points out some of the problems that this is causing with Comox. And just Councillor Sullivan, you were at the meeting. Could you put forward some of the concerns?
Well, certainly the board voted on this motion in November of 2019, and that's when Cumberland's garbage day was Wednesday. So at the time, it just seemed like a good idea to kind of trim the budget a bit. And then we got switched in Wednesday, and we've had a couple meetings that were canceled since COVID. So it's kind of flown under the radar until now. But I'd be absolutely supportive in writing our own letter, and because I think that's going to make things very difficult for us with the Monday closures, now that our date is on Monday for garbage pickup.
Yes, Councillor Brown?
Just wondering if Rob is in attendance and if he could give us a brief impact.
He's on board.
Yes, sorry, Your Worship. Yeah, Rob's not on the call right now, but I could certainly provide an update. We spoke literally this afternoon about this item, and so we have had numerous conversations with Mterra, our contract provider, and our biggest challenge is for most of the periods is not a huge issue, but there are 5 days. Oh, there he is. There are 5 days that the village is potentially impacted by Mondays.
Excuse me, Clayton, somebody needs to mute because I'm getting noise.
It's background in the office.
It's not my doors are shut. Okay. Sorry about that. Continue.
Yeah, so we've begun the dialogue with Mterra and looking for some solutions. Unfortunately, conversation to date, it is a challenge, and there seems to be some different. I know Comox obviously is in the same position that we are, and Courtney is also. They've proceeded with the What is it? What's the process called there, Rob? The day ahead? There he is. He's gonna
It's the added day.
add a day. Thank you. And so they're looking at some different solutions there. The challenge is what I guess the biggest concern across the region is for us all to go to add a day. We're not sure even our contractor is going to be able to actually provide that service there. So there is a lot of work in the background on this, but this is something that has created some challenges for sure. Like what's been noted for Comox, we're in a similar situation, not maybe as much as Comox, but there are some issues that we're going to be faced with. Do you have anything to add, Rob?
Well, I think you and Councillor Sullivan kind of covered it because, like we heard, we used to be on a Wednesday schedule and now we're switched to the Monday. And with Courtney on the added day program, it really messes things up. It's going to be a challenge, and I don't know. I mean, if push comes to shove, I mean, we just tell the contractor to collect garbage on Mondays, whether the landfill's open or not, and he'll have to sort it out. But Campbell River's in the same boat. They're really pushing back on this stat holiday closure. So we'll see how it plays out, but it's going to be a challenge.
Anyone else have a question?
Just curious as to Emterra's response to the possibility of opening just for the Emterra trucks or the Waste Management Center. I mean, that seems like a reasonable solution, but they must have to have a certain amount of staff and yada yada. I'm sure there's some issues with that, but I'd be curious to see what the answer is to that query.
Yeah, at a staff level, we've had that conversation with them, but there doesn't seem to be an appetite. They feel they need too many staff to open the scales and actually manage the face of the landfill where the garbage is being dumped. But what you guys aren't hearing, we're talking about residential garbage, but there's the whole commercial sector as well that's being impacted by this, and that nobody's had that discussion. And Emterra is a majority. They have the majority of the contracts in the valley here for bin dumping, commercial bin dumping. That's being impacted as well. And I don't know what commercial businesses are going to do or how they're going to adapt, but that's going to be a challenge.
So it's got a long way to go yet to solve the problem between the two, the commercial and the residential pickup.
Well, a long way to go, and we have to have it sorted out by February. The Family Day in February, that's the first Monday that we're going to be impacted with this proposed closure. So,
okay,
we'll see what happens next week, I guess.
Yes. Anybody else? Okay, would somebody like to make the motion that's written?
Move that council direct staff to write to the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Board on the impact of the Comox Valley Waste Management Center statutory holiday closure on the Village of Cumberland Solid Waste Collection Service, as well as to all local government solid waste collection contractors in the region.
Second, Councillor Sproul, all in favor? Carried. Next, the council received the correspondence from Dennis Dugas, Mayor, District of Port Hardy, Reid provincial funding for emergency fire equipment, small communities. This letter, Dennis started this dialogue a number of months back and wanted to know what the best route was taken, because they, as a small community, have been to UBCM numerous times, and they don't feel they're getting anywhere with what they would like to see done. And so he's asked that it be struck up at AVICC. And in discussions with him, I talked to him about the way that we did the social procurement. And he thinks that that's a great way to try and make this work for all small communities, especially on the island, getting together. And if each group of participants get together and figure out the solution to this, the government might listen if we're all speaking the same language. And you'll see with the information that he supplied to us, there's a lot of information there that benefits the villages and the small communities, but we're not seeing those. And we need to find out why we're not being looked at in the way of fire apparatus and fire equipment. A prime example is the fire hall and not receiving any grant funding for that and the cost that it is to the community. But it's also the fire equipment and the volunteers. It has everything to do with the fire departments and the cost that it is to communities. And for the smaller communities, it is a huge commitment to fund these. And the days of volunteers is long gone. And they are paid departments now, the majority of the departments, and that all adds costs. Plus the rules and regulations that they have to work under and the training. It is all very hard now. So if you have any questions, what he's asking is that I be appointed to help him work on this for at AVICC. And I have already been interviewed by the Campbell River Mayor and on this issue and what it did to our fire department, what it does and continues to do, and the costs that we have to put out for our fire department. I find it very interesting that it is one of the most necessary things in a municipality, and the government doesn't want to fund us properly. We want our fire departments to be safe. We want our people to be safe. And this is very, very important to the community. So what is your pleasure? There's no recommendation there, but he is asking if council members have any problem if I'm appointed to a select committee.
I think that's a great idea, especially if we could get some funding retroactively, because we've basically taken care of all the things that we need to with our tiny little budget in this village.
Mm-hmm. And it's only going to keep going up. Mm-hmm. Yes, Councillor Brown?
I just wanted to move receipt. We skipped that bit.
I thought I said that.
I thought we did that, but maybe not.
We did that.
We didn't say it. You introduced it and started speaking to it. So
Oh, okay. Okay,
just
so
want to
you
make
can,
sure it's on the record there.
okay, seconder,
Thank you.
all in favor, carried, okay. So is there any questions from anyone?
Nope.
I'll
sounds-
make a motion of your appointment to the select committee.
Thank you,
Second.
thank you. And I will report, once we start our monthly reports, I will make that happen. Thank you very much. All in favor? Carried. Next, we have reports. The council received the Lake Park 2020 Park Operator Annual Report.
Move receipt.
Seconded Councillor Sutherland, all in favor? Carried.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be quick. I think this is a good report following the presentation on Stoughton Falls, just in recognition of some of the challenges we face at Cumberland Lake Park that were magnified this year with COVID and boom in outdoor recreation. But as you guys have received in the last few years, I'll let Genevieve Burdett from the Cumberland Lake Wilderness Society speak to the specifics here. But the report attached summarizes this year at Lake Park, which despite the challenges of COVID was a successful year, I would say on the whole. But there's a lot of work still to be done in recognizing the successful partnership model that we have with CLWS and opportunities to build off that. There's also a recommendation for us to pursue a longer term agreement. So if you guys would like to receive the presentation from Genevieve now, that would be the next step.
I will make the motion. I will let council receive a presentation from the park operator, Genevieve Burdett, Executive Director, Cumberland Lake Wilderness Society.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Hello, Genevieve. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to share my screen here with you. Oh. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to give you the highlights of the 2020 report here. Just a quick background, as you know, we are a local Cumberland not-for-profit that was established in 2015 in response to the village looking for an operator for Lake Park. This year we did some strategic planning and we redid our mission. Our current mission is to create wonder and connection through outdoor experiences. So yeah, it was a challenging year, but we were surprisingly quite successful in the end. Our occupancy rate was up at 88%, increased from 63% last year, and up from 50%, 50, in 2018. So you can see that is increasing really rapidly. As a result of that, our dividends were also up. It was another record-breaking dividend payment this year of over $27,000, which was a bit of a surprise for us this year. And then above and beyond our sort of job description as a park operator, we're putting more and more energy and funds into programming and capital projects. So $32,000 into outdoor ed programming and $22,000 into capital projects this year. So I will just go through and give you a quick breakdown of each of these. So starting with the campground, we did have to close in May due to COVID, and we made all our decisions in partnership with the village and following the lead of the province. And so we refunded bookings in May, and I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the CLWS board here. They actually, before the pandemic, recognized the risk of having only one revenue stream. And so they created a fund that would allow us to operate, for an entire year with no revenue. So even though we weren't sure if we were going to open, we were able to continue in confidence, and the board committed to keeping all their core staff employed, even if we didn't end up opening. But luckily we were able to open in June partially, and then we fully reopened at the end of July. You can see we had 100% occupancy in both July and August. So COVID actually ended up being a bit of a winner for campgrounds. With camping has been on the rise for many years in North America, and with COVID, it just compounded that rise with people looking for socially distant local outdoor holidays. So here's a breakdown of the campground guests. We limited guests to Vancouver Island for the month of June, and then BC residents only for the rest of the summer. If you look at the 24% from the Comox Valley, I'll give you a breakdown of that. So this is just showing what we already know, which is we have campers from across the Comox Valley. It's a regional amenity, and Courtenay is the highest user group. So camping is on the rise, as so is day use, and so is the boat launch. We know this park is the only sanctioned and easily accessible public access point. And if we layer on top of that COVID-19 travel restrictions, population growth, hotter summers due to climate change, we get the perfect storm of overcrowding and parking problems and congestion. This is actually a screenshot from Councillor Brown's video in the spring. Unfortunately, I don't have many videos or photos, but it actually gets quite a bit worse than this in the summer. So there's a lot of actions that we and the village can take to help alleviate this problem, but none of those things really decrease the demand. So we really believe that having more sanctioned day use in other areas of Comox Lake is really a key part of any solution. We also think it's an equitable solution because right now Cumberland really disproportionately bears the cost of supporting day use in the Comox Valley on the lake. And from a conservation perspective, we think it makes sense as well, because currently those other access points are still being used, often in destructive ways. So if they became sanctioned, you know, the landowner could put in bathrooms and garbage cans and fire rings. Obviously, this is a timely issue with the CVRD going through management planning process for Coal Beach. So we really hope that these conversations are happening at a regional level and that we will see more sanctioned day use in other places to help deal with this problem. Here's a breakdown of our seasonal boat launch users. Again, it's a regional amenity with Courtenay being the highest user group. We don't have any statistics for day use, but I think it's safe to assume that it's pretty similar. So increasing usage comes with its drawbacks, but there's also some benefits, including increased revenues and dividends. One of the 4 goals listed in the Cumberland Lake Park Master Plan is economic sustainability. And I think this is a good indicator of that. If I look 5 years ago, we paid the village $17,000. And this year we paid over $27,000 in dividends. Also, West Coast Water Sports and the concession had really successful seasons. It's nice to see the village getting a return on their investment in the concession and just for the community to have some more consistency with food out at the lake. Outdoor education is also one of the 4 part goals of the Cumberland Lake Master Plan. And like I mentioned, we put in $32,000. So we created a park interpreter position. This is Lily, and she's at Cumberland. She grew up in Cumberland. She's now in her 2nd year of environmental sciences. And she created all these free park programs. She offered them twice a day, 5 days a week in the summer. She did evening presentations, interpretive hikes, art projects, and kids programs. If you didn't hear about these programs, it's because we're trying to keep it pretty quiet as we had limited space in these programs due to COVID. In total, she offered about 113 free hours of programming to almost 1,000 people. Another program that we weren't able to keep quite so quiet was the beach music. The idea was this was background music on the beach, so people who were swimming or hanging out on their beach blanket could listen to some music. And this went really well for most of the summer. I'd say about 90% of the summer. And then unfortunately, it got a little bit too popular, so we did have to shut it down in September as it was sort of turning into an event rather than background music. And then these are just some other programs that our park interpreter put on. I got these photos actually from social media as campers were just posting photos of their time at the campground and sharing the programs that they participated in. And then we offered 11 programs to SD 71. These programs, we subsidize them. We pay about $300 of the cost, and we ask schools to pay $100. And if schools can't afford that, then we just waive that fee. And we updated the curriculum this year. So it links with the BC curriculum, and it also includes First Nations content. So we received a $15,000 grant from the Comox Valley Community Foundation this year. And then we put in $10,000 and the CVRD put in another $3,000. And we bought these 2 Voyageur canoes. And we're going to use these to do watershed education starting next spring. It's really a legacy project of the Connected by Water program. And we'll be doing school programs as well as offering free community programs through the Park Interpreter program. Excuse me. And finally, capital investments. This is something new. We haven't invested a lot of money back in park infrastructure before. But as we become more financially sustainable, we're able to put more and more money back into the park. So this year we created 6 new walking campsites. We received matching funding from ICE-T. And these campsites have a really small footprint. They really allow us to increase capacity while maintaining like the serenity and beauty of the park. They were recommended in both the master plan for the park as well as by the economic development strategy as a way to increase accommodation in Cumberland during the summer months. And then we created 2 outdoor nature classrooms and an outdoor amphitheater for our school or for our programs to use. Sorry, like, okay. We've also allocated $28,000 for upcoming projects in 2021, including a new playground and a new roof on the picnic shelter on the main beach. And we have over $70,000 in a capital projects fund right now, with a plan to do a larger project out at the lake in the coming years. So looking ahead, we're really excited about the staff recommendation to enter into a 10-year contract. It gives us the confidence to invest long-term in the park, and it gives the village a partner that can come to the table with some money. I really like this comment that was captured in the 2014 master plan. It says, right now it's just a parking lot at the beach, but with the right vision, it could be a world-class facility that is a key part of the community. And I really think that by working together in partnership, we can make this a world-class facility. So thank you very much. I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll answer any questions you might have.
Councillor Sproul.
Thank you, Genevieve. That was a really good presentation. And whilst I go to the beach a lot, I didn't notice, it was good to see all this stuff about the Voyageur canoes and all the stuff that's happening. And I think it already is a world-class place. I mean, you can go rock climbing, you can do all the water sports. I see a time when people will go up the lake and find a route to the glacier by kayak and hiking. The potential for so many things is there. And yeah, I'm really happy to see that it has done so well financially and in every other way in a COVID year. This has been the most challenging times. And of course, all those outdoor spaces are super popular. So I'm surprised that there weren't more serious traffic jams really down there, but parking is such an issue that, yeah, it'll be a challenge because of the terrain. But anyway, I'm very thrilled about the Wilderness Society running it, because we've tried all kinds of situations over the last 18 years that haven't always turned out well. And so far, this one is really doing well. So thanks to the Society.
Councillor Kettler.
Yeah, congratulations on the amazing year. As Councillor Sproul said, especially during COVID, because even though there was high demand for outdoor space, that brought all sorts of challenges, I'm sure, and you did really well and provided some amazing programs, and I'm really delighted to see all that. I definitely feel like we're moving towards something really good, and it's been a really good partnership. So I do support the 10-year agreement. As far as the secondary or alternate access, I haven't heard those conversations at the regional district. Most of the things that get talked about are watershed protection and not access. So I think we have a ways to go there if that's our objective, is to find secondary access. But I will definitely bring that to the board and see what they had to say. There has been conversations about reviving an old regional parks function, but Cumberland was never actually part of that function, so we would have to then join another service. So lots of things to think about on that side. But again, congratulations, you're doing amazing work, and thanks so much.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, good job, Jen. That's I was worried with the closure and the reduced campsite capacity, and you guys did a great job managing it. I have two things I want to speak to. The first is the the bylaw, you did mention that we did manage to get bylaw out there. I know there were a collection of Quebecers camping on the road for a good portion of the summer, and just wondering how that. I presume they're coming in to use the shower and the washrooms, but I was quite concerned to see, you know, fire rings and towels strung up drying, and you know, dogs and all sorts of things happening in that little pullout. So was bylaw able to speak to those people? Are you aware of that, or how did that go?
Yeah, so everything, as you know, beyond the yellow gate is not our jurisdiction. So it's the CVRD. However, the CVRD does not have any camping overnight bylaws, nor do they have any parking bylaws. So there's not, unless they created new bylaws, there's nothing that they can do. However, it's on my to-do list. I am going to be sending Kevin information regarding what is happening out there with the campfires, and people are not coming to use our bathrooms. They're just using, you know, the forest that's very close to the lake. And so we are going to send that on to the CVRD so they know that's happening out there.
Awesome, thank you. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was, I agree that just for management and ecological value, that having increased access points to the lake is a better solution than expanding the parking lot at the lake. I don't think that's a very good use of space out there. And I also think we would want to, and have been working for years, to try and find a way to build a trail so that people can walk or bike out to the lake, which would be much more sustainable, although potentially very expensive, but I understand we're getting somewhere on that. But I think with the purchase of Whites Bay, that and the implementation of the deep water intake, and that allowing for less impact, I think, from swimmers on the water source, that now might be a better time to have those conversations about opening up access on the other side so that we are sharing that access. I also wonder about encouraging all those stakeholders to get together, including CLWS and the Rod and Gun, to discuss boat access. And right now, the Rod and Gun only allows boat access with $100 a year membership. No, it's more than that. It's $150, I think. So they're not taking as much of that public use as they could. And is there something we can do there to encourage them to have a reduced fee or enable more boat users to use that side of the lake? And that would probably help.
Yeah, oops. Okay. Yeah, no, that's a great idea. And I think Kevin can probably speak to there is going to be some consultation as we work to develop the boat launch. I don't know if Kevin wants to speak to that, but
yeah. For sure, I can jump in. Well, I think right off the bat, our most immediate priority is the safety of the docks. And that has been, thus far in the budget process, that's been funded to create at least safe access onto one. The concept of larger reconfiguration, new infrastructure, different management models for the boat launch, hopefully that conversation or that project will be funded through the SARUP application that was put in October. It's a big project. There's a significant planning component in terms of the number of different stakeholders. Rod and Game's obviously one, the regional district, given the drinking water supply. And as Jen showed in the graphics, the usership of that facility is very much region-wide. So any changes we make, we have to be considering that perspective as well. I think the topic of congestion, the resolution really has to be multifaceted. And I think there's several ongoing processes that are all, I think, hopefully going to help chip away at the issue. There is there's some great progress being made with our local Rotary Club on the Pathway project, and I anticipate being ready. It's probably going to be sometime early in the new year, bringing forward an update to council on that front. So I think that the boat launch, looking at other locations around the lake, all these things are active, and it's encouraging, but none of them are simple and none of them are cheap.
Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, Councillor Brown made my point with her last point there, just talking about the rod and gun and the only other boat launch. Maybe there's a conversation to be had about them beefing up their day use. I don't know if that's something that interests them, but I'm sure that could be a revenue generator for them if there was a reasonable day service through there. I'm not sure about that, but other than that, I'm very happy with the success of the lake park. The food down there is delicious, and it's been awesome every time I've been down there. So thanks for your good work.
Okay, thank you very much, Genevieve. Excellent year you had. Very proud of the facility. It looks amazing, and you're keeping it in tip-top shape. The one thing I did want to ask is the sailboat that's in there. Whose sailboat is it, and how did they get in there?
Kevin, do you know? It's outside of our jurisdiction. It's in the CVRD zone. I have no idea.
Did it go in and on our boat ramp?
It's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
Many years.
A couple of years ago, I have concerns of it still being in there. There shouldn't be any boat moored in the lake. We know a bad example of the past of what happened, and it took years to get it out of there, that issue. So I think it needs to be addressed and it needs to be taken out. I don't know whose responsibility it is, but I think we should find out. The other thing is, I'd be really concerned about joining a parks service at the regional district, but Courtney gets funding for their outdoor recreation pool, and they don't belong to a service. It's through their granting program, is it not? And so why couldn't we ask for something like that set up? Because we can certainly prove that the vast majority of people using that lake park are from the rest of the valley, and they should be paying something into it. I certainly don't want to give up the park to another authority. I think it's ours, it's our jewel. It was gifted to us by Phil Burke, and I think it should always remain part of Cumberland. But I certainly would be willing to accept money from the rest of the valley towards it. And the same as the trail system. So there's lots of ways of looking at it. I think it's really important that other options open up, like the land the regional district has purchased, because it's not going to be closed. They're not going to be able to have a guard out there constantly every day working there. I think that's very hard to tell the people that have used that for years that they can no longer go there. So I hope there's a win situation there with all of us working together to get that. Yes, it is our water system, but the systems they are building nowadays are so up to date that they should be able to work together. So thank you very much. And there is a motion there on the paper if no one else has any comments.
That council direct staff to enter into formal deliberations with Cumberland Lake Wilderness Society on a 10-year park operations and improvement agreement, 2022 to 2031, and report back to council with an agreement proposal.
Second. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jen.
That council received the Wild Safe BC 2020 annual report, and that council received the presentation from Ashley Marks, Cumberland Wild Safe BC coordinator.
Move receipt.
Seconder. All in favor? Carried.
Hi, good evening. I'm Ashley Marks, if you haven't met me before. So I'm the Wild Safe BC communicator for the Village of Cumberland. For those of you that haven't heard about the program before, Wild Safe BC is the provincial leader in preventing conflict with wildlife through collaboration, education, and community solutions. So I'm just going to briefly show you guys a quick PowerPoint and then let you get on to your more important meetings tonight. Are you guys able to see the screen there?
Yes, we are.
Oh, perfect. So the Wild Safe BC program it has evolved out of the highly successful Bear Aware program, and it is owned and delivered by the British Columbia Conservation Foundation. So Wild Safe BC provides information on how we can reduce human and wildlife conflicts in all aspects of our lives, including how we live, work, play, and grow. And then so what we have here is a graph that illustrates reports to the Conservation Office's services as well as the Wildlife Alert Reporting Program in Cumberland from January 2016 to October 2020. As you can see, there are more cougar calls this year than any other call combined for 2020. So I found that it was quite important to continue educating the community members on best practices when it comes to wildlife in general and not just strictly bears. So this season, I presented 7 times to just over 100 participants. These were all Wild Safe Rangers presentations, so they were primarily children's groups. 6 out of the 7 presentations were outdoors, and it allowed the kids to socially distance or group with their quote unquote bubble and provide adequate social distancing from me to the children. So I did present to the Cumberland Community School, grades 1 and 2. And Hand in Hand Nature Education Program, which was a lot of fun. We did preschool ages 2 to 4, and then a Forest Buds program, which was ages 5 to 9. I also did over the summer, I believe it was in July or August, I got together with a Cumberland Recreation Summer Camp. It was just a group of varying age children. It was a lot of fun as well. So over the summer and early fall, I set up a wildlife information booth at the end of Sutton Road at the beginning of the community forest. I had over 300 attendees over 4 separate booths, and that was a really successful area I found to set up because a lot of people were going mountain biking there. I also set up one booth, a standalone booth, of course, because most events were canceled due to COVID, at the Village Park, and I found it didn't have as many people, and again, that's likely due to COVID. There weren't any huge events this year. So throughout this season, I did garbage tagging in collaboration with the bylaw officer. I also visited just over 600 houses in Cumberland, so about a third of all houses, by doing door-to-door activities as pictured on the right-hand side here. In the picture, you can see on the bottom, there's a little QR code. I found that really helpful because if people scan that with their phone, it led them right to our community's Facebook page. So that was really nice to be added on there. So regardless if people were home or not this year, I left a door hanger just because of COVID. Again, I didn't want to invade their space, especially when they're at home. So no matter what, people just got door hangers this year. I ended up staying on top of our Wild Safe Cumberland Facebook page, and over the season, it grew by about 20% of the following. So that was really good. Finally, I gathered a lot of information regarding future maintenance plans and or events to possibly be hosted at a later date in the Old Orchard, just to help with the windfall apples. Coming into late fall, we find there's a lot of apples on the ground, and it often increases the amount of bears coming up at the end of Dunsmuir. So challenges for the 2020 season include, of course, COVID and the lack of wildlife reports to the RAP line by the community. That's likely onset to some events that happened a couple of years ago with the Conservation Officer Services. I find that residents in Cumberland are often nervous about calling the RAP line. Unmanaged fruit trees and heritage orchards, of course, that's always an issue in Cumberland, but Lush Valley has helped out a great deal with this past year. When I was doing door-to-door, I would also hand out Lush Valley information packages, and I found out by talking to Lush Valley that quite a few people in Cumberland were indeed contacting them, which is great. And another challenge, of course, was cancellation of many of public events like Canada Day and the Heritage Day, where I couldn't set up booth this year because they were canceled due to COVID. So goals for the 2021 Wild Safe BC Village of Cumberland program include implementation of management strategies for fruit trees and heritage orchards, and keep promoting Lush Valley because they've been doing a really good job. Increase social media presence and following, so keep doing door-to-door and handing out those little codes so people can go to our Facebook page. increase community sponsorships and partnerships. So this past year, WildSafe BC has rolled out a program for something called the WildSafe Business Pledge to help promote businesses that would like to be bear aware and teach their employees how to be safe around wildlife and things they can do while at work to keep wildlife wild. And then finally, of course, continue progress towards the Bear Smart community status. I know Cumberland's been doing a really great job with this, and I think within the next coming couple of years here, they'll complete the status. They're doing a great job. So finally, I'd like to thank you guys, of course. So I'd like to thank the Village of Cumberland, as well as my other sponsors, the British Columbia Ministry of Environment and the British Columbia Conservation Foundation, as well as a special thank you to all our supporters, volunteers, and partners, and a great big thank you to our bylaw officer for helping me out whenever I needed help. So that concludes my presentation. Do you guys have any questions at all?
Yes, I'm sure they do. Councillor Sproul has her finger up already. Go ahead, Councillor Sproul.
Yeah. Yes, Ashley, thank you so much. Am I unmuted? Yes. When I think back to when I first got on council, 2002, 2003, we had so many bears died. When the electric fence went around the dump, we were at UBCM and we got reports, oh, 4 died today, 4 bears. And it was about 30 or 40 one fall. It was heartbreaking. People didn't see the connection between putting their garbage out and having the bear in their yard. And then they just phoned the conservation officer. So that's why people have been leery in the last 2 or 3 years of phoning. But I have to say, I thank your organization for helping us. And I thank all the people of Cumberland who've been helping message. That one time when, was it the Rotary organized a going door to door on a Saturday? So many people turned up to volunteer, including people from Courtney, Comox. I mean, so much has gone into this and getting people on side. And I don't think there's been any loss of bears this season. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
Brilliant.
I'd like to keep it that way.
Yeah. The issue with the apples at the orchard is complicated because
absolutely
bears have been, I've been there 40 something years living right next to that orchard. And the bears have been there longer than me. So, you know, that's how they've always fattened up for winter. But anyway, that's a big conversation. But thank you again.
Okay, we'll go around the table. Councillor Sullivan.
No, just a lot of thanks. That's a nice report. And also the CBI in Cumberland, the Bear Aware program has really helped out with saving the bears. So yeah, thanks for all your good work.
Okay. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I wondered if you saw our new mural with Become Bearland.
Yes, I love it. I have a photo of it and I sent it to my boss.
Nice.
I was like, every town needs to do this. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And the COVID, the distancing sign with the great big bear going into town and in town. I love it.
Yeah. So very much appreciate your work and keeping that awareness up around garbage. I know that's been had a huge impact over the last few years. And mostly now when I see bear poop, it's just fruit and not garbage, and that makes me very happy. I have noticed a distinct decrease this year in like a huge decrease in the amount of bear, I don't know what the appropriate word is, bear scat, is that the right word? Bear poo?
Yeah.
And park, like last year we counted 17 poos in one walkthrough, and this year I've not seen more than maybe 4. So so I think the bears are staying away more and more. We've got a lot more traffic in our trails and in that area of town, I think, as well. So that's keeping them out, which is great. And as Councillor Sproul mentioned, the orchard is complicated because we are attached to those trees, and having them produce fruit for bears and for people. But I agree that they are an attractant, and hopefully the bears stop there and turn around once they're nice and full. My question is, or Lush Valley can take them. My question is on the cougars and whether that is, in your mind, a connection to the amount of deer and bunnies that we're having in town. Are they coming in that source or what? Sorry.
So in the full report, I ended up actually correlating it to two things likely. Again, it's not a surefire unless more research is done, of course. But either the amount of infrastructure that's gone in the last couple of years, Cumberland has been growing a lot and it's been encroaching on a lot of woods, or deer. But you know what? I never actually thought about the bunnies, to be honest. That'd be a whole nother thing to look at. Absolutely. Yeah. There's quite a few little bunnies. Yeah, I can count them when I go out doing garbage. That and stray cats out at night. Cats would be a big one too. I counted 16 or 17 cats in one night.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a cat count and then a garbage count. The bins were only at 4 and the cat count was at like 17 by midnight. And I'm like, well, let's call it a night. But it could be due to many different things, but it was worrisome for me looking at the amount of cougars in the village this year compared to bears and where they were too. I don't know if you guys saw over the summer, like there was the one cougar at about 7 a.m. in the morning by the Cumberland Grind. Well, people were going to get their coffee, so that would worry me. Yeah. And then up at the school but school was canceled, of course, early this year, but it was in the late spring. There was a cougar up near the school as well.
Yeah. And so are there programs that help manage the wildlife that is attracting the cougars? Like how, there's nothing that goes that far, takes it to that.
Primarily, we just educate people. Please don't feed the deer, for one. I found that a lot of people were letting the deer hang out in their front yards. So when I was doing my walkarounds, I would often hand out brochures on deer and why it's important not to feed the deer, because it's not just the deer. It always lures in other predators like cougars.
Yeah.
About the house cats kind of thing, it does outline that on the WildSafe BC website, saying try to feed your pets inside and bring them in every night, but that's kind of up to Cumberland to decide. We can't really enforce that. We can't catch people's cats. It's hard to do.
Can you catch the bunnies for us though?
Oh, it would be nice, but the Nanaimo Airport can't keep up with it either.
Oh, no. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kettler.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, and I'm really happy to see the progress that we've made with the bears. I did was part of the Cumberland Bear Initiative, did the door-to-door knocking and telling people about the compost program and how to deal with their garbage. And I think the community has responded amazingly. So that's great, and let's keep that up. And I guess when we figure out what is attracting the cougars, we can try and work on that as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ashley. I think it would be a wonderful day when you come and you tell us that you haven't had to ticket anyone, and especially the ones that do it on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it would be really nice to see that they are learning that what they're doing is not acceptable. And so thank you very much for doing that for us. We really appreciate all the work that you have put into this. And it's amazing the number of places you visited, how many people you spoke to. That is during COVID, that has been absolutely amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.
And we have no motion. We on to the next.
Thank you.
That council received the long-term borrowing for the fire hall project report. Councillor Pruill, Councillor Sullivan, all in favor? Carried. Michelle.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this report is to provide Council with the information needed to approve your long-term borrowing from the Municipal Finance Authority as part of their 2021 spring borrowing issue. And also we need to request from the regional district consent to the village's borrowing as well, so they can include us in their security issuing bylaw. So we have not finished the project yet, but I do think it's well underway, and it's definitely going to be done by spring is my thought process. So I thought, well, I better get the borrowing underway now. And so we are recommending to borrow the total allowable amount under the bylaw of $4.2 million. We need to ask the regional district to include us in their security issuing by December 11th. That's their deadline. The market rates on the MFA website for the 20 and 30-year terms is 2.43%. So being conservative, I used 2.8% interest for the 20-year term estimates and 3% for the 30-year term estimates that are in the report. And of course, we need to wait until the actual debt agreements come to us in the spring to know what the actual increase or the actual rate is. So if I look at your total payments estimated using these interest rates on page 80 of your agenda, you're going to be spending just over 5.9 million over 20 years for the $4.2 million debt. And if you go with a 30-year term, you're going to be spending just over $7 million on the $4.2 million debt. And so the difference between the 30-year and the 20-year over the life of the term would be an extra just over $1.1 million if you went with the 30-year term. However, if you go with the 30-year term, the annual estimated payments are less than the 20-year term. So you're looking at about $60,000 a year more if you go with a 20-year term than the 30. Staff are still recommending property taxes as the funding source, and the financial plan that's on the agenda tonight for consideration of first reading includes the property taxes needed for this debt. The 20% of fire operating costs are covered by the regional district. And that is because we provide fire protection to an area in Royston. And so then they pay us for that fire protection. And of course, included in the fire operating costs is this debt. So they will be paying 20% of that debt. We also recommend in the financial plan that's on the agenda for later, that emergency and public safety reserve be used to stabilize the tax increase for this debt over 5 years instead of all in 1 year. And so I think, yeah, so at one point, I think I said that, yeah, it would be like, I think it's like you would have to increase over 7% all in 1 year if you didn't stabilize that, the tax increase for that, for the debt, which we did expect when we went to the AAP. Everyone was told that it would probably be $142 a year with the operating costs. So the interest rate managed to drop that down a little bit, but then we dropped it even further down to $38 for an average single family household in 2021, or $24 for a 30-year term for the average household. And you would see that increasing over the 5 years between $14 and $17 per year, so that you can get up to that actual cost of $107 or $79 at the end after you've stabilized the income. But staff is recommending a 20-year amortization for the debt term. And so I guess tonight I'm just looking to ask council to approve the borrowing and move the motion that's recommended. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone? Councillor Spruill?
Yes, thanks so much for that. This is quite difficult to wrap one's head around all the things, all the pieces of information, but 30-year debt, taking the debt of the borrowing out over 30 years results in a lower amount per person to pay. Although gather there's interest involved, and therefore it's more expensive to have a longer period debt term. But what about the future people coming to Cumberland? If you have a 30-year debt term, more people into the future will be paying towards the fire hall than just the current population now.
That's correct. Yeah.
So it would be better to do it over 30 years so they can share in the costs.
So you just have to balance your benefit, I guess, right? You know, you're going to pay the $1.1 million overall to all village taxpayers, but yes, you're right, for the population that joins the village in the last 10 years of the 30-year term will pay for the fire hall as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, this is a really big debt. And I guess it goes back to, you know, what Mayor Dugas of Port Hardy was talking about, that, you know, the province doesn't offer any kind of grant to help support that. So, so we end up paying millions of dollars in interest for a population of, you know, 4,000 or less, and that's a lot for us. I certainly have had my concerns about the fire hall. I would have preferred to have a multi-purpose building as opposed to just a dedicated fire hall, and the size and expense of it is quite a bit for our small town. I do worry that that 20% that goes to is paid by the regional district right now for fire protection for Royston won't necessarily be there 20 years from now. Their population in Area A is growing, and they're going to likely need a fire hall of their own. So we need to be able to consider that in our calculation. So I would actually prefer the 20-year to the 30-year, just because of that risk. Yeah, and you know, we have to think about this payment and the interest. I think the interest kind of equates to the amount that we get from our host community agreement, so it kind of cancels that out. And that was, you know, the money that kind of gave us some leeway in our budgeting. So yeah, it makes it pretty lean and makes our choices pretty tough. So it's great to have, or we don't quite have it, but it will be wonderful to have a brand new fire hall. But obviously it does come at a huge cost.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I agree. It's I know we've looked at these numbers many times now, and it still hurts me to think that we will pay either $1.7 million in interest or $2.8 million in interest. So I'm definitely in favor of the 20-year term, because I do not want to pay more interest. And also just recognizing that the only reason we're even able to entertain taking on this kind of debt is because we have grown so much over the last while. And while that has created some concern in the community and some tension, it's also allowing us to do major works like this. So so just wanted to acknowledge that. And yeah, I'm all for the 20-year term.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, I support staff recommendation for 20 years also.
Okay. Michelle, we at no time can we pay the loan down, can we? There's a certain parameters of what we can do and what we can't do once this loan has been accepted by the municipal finance.
That's a very good question. We actually can pay it down if we had some funds. So MFA locks their long-term debt into for 10 years, and then they refinance after 10 years. And that's why we use a larger rate than their 10-year rate on the website, because we have no idea what they're going to refinance after 10 years. The interesting thing that they did with the water supply debt, though, is they only locked it in for 5 years because of the low interest rate. And so it's actually going to come up for refinancing in 5 years. So when I come back for the parcel charge for that, with that, you're going to see some analysis on that as well. So I don't know what they're going to do with this one. It will be locked in only for 5 years because of the low interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
But typically they do lock it in for 10 years, and you can pay it down after that 10 years before you refinance.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there's a motion there for council. So would somebody like to move it?
Sure, I'll move the council approve the borrowing of $4.2 million as authorized through Fire Hall Loan Authorization Bylaw number 1122/2019 from Municipal Finance Authority of British Columbia as part of its 2020 fall borrowing session, and that the Village of Cumberland requests that the Comox Valley Regional District consent to the Village of Cumberland borrowing over a 20-year term and include the borrowing in a security issuing bylaw.
Seconder? Councillor Brown? All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Next, that council received the residential rental 10-year zoning report. Councillor Sproul, Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried.
So thank you for getting this on the agenda. I was looking at it because we do have 3 new apartment buildings coming to our downtown core, and right now the developers are telling us that they will be rentals, but we have nothing that assures us that they will maintain rental status and not be get sold. And our housing needs assessment definitely identified rental housing, and we all know how hard it is to find rental accommodation in this community. And so I just wanted to look at different, make sure that we are using all the tools at our in our toolbox to make sure that we're increasing our rental stock by adding these buildings to the community. So I did set up a meeting with the with ministry staff that Councillor Kettler and the mayor attended with me, and we got a little bit of background beyond the communication that's included in the agenda. And we did find out that there are a couple of communities that are also looking at this right now, including Port Hardy and Ladysmith, which would be the closest to our size that have implemented this. We've also learned that there is some legal action around this as well. So I just wanted to bring this to council's attention and get, the feel of it, whether we want to move forward with looking at some rental. We are able to either put the zoning on a particular building, or we could put it on a block or 2 blocks or 5 blocks or a whole zone, or whatever we want. It's pretty flexible. And then looking for staff to bring us some options back.
I also looked into some other options, and I was surprised to learn that there are other options out there that we could use. So I think that there's pros and cons to this, but it certainly is worth looking into. What of course concerns us, as many other municipalities, is the lawsuit, and to really wait to see what that result is, because we don't want to go into anything that's going to cause us a lawsuit down the road. But in saying that, I think it's worth investigating. Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, maybe instead of, asking for a big report back, I think, a couple of things that were highlighted out of the meeting were that we could put the rental tenure zoning into our zoning bylaw, so that, as Councillor Brown said, we have that tool in our toolkit. We don't necessarily have to use it. The most appropriate time to use it is during a rezoning application, and not retroactively. So I think it's good to have in our zoning bylaw if we get to that point on a newer property and want to use it. And then the other thing that came up is it doesn't have to be lot specific. You can have this zoning within a building itself. You can divide it either vertically, like an apartment building, just separate floors, or horizontally if it's a bunch of townhouses and you only wanted to do part of the townhouses. So it's really very interesting that way. And I was thinking in our downtown core, if we asked staff if we could review the level of apartment buildings that we have now, which is 4 stories, if we could look at reducing that to 3 stories, and then we would be able to use this tool for density bonusing and add a 4th story as rental only. That was one of the options that was talked about during the meeting. I think was a good one that would apply to Cumberland. So maybe in the report we could ask for those 2 things. On the next review of our zoning bylaw, we could look at putting in the rental zoning and look at changes to the level of our apartment buildings on the downtown core.
I think it would be really important for staff to contact Port Hardy and Ladysmith and see what they have come up with and take it from there. I really like the idea of building on someone else's for our community, not starting out from the very beginning again. So I think that would save a lot of time. Yes, Councillor Brown?
I would also, I just totally lost my train of thought. I would also like to ask staff to talk to the owners of the 3 buildings that are building rentals and have told us, or that are building apartment buildings that are on, have already gone through the process, and ask them if they would be willing to put that zoning on their property in a collaborative way, because there's nothing stopping them from agreeing to doing that. If they're going to keep them as rentals, why not?
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I agree with all of you. I think this is really time for us to really take a good look at these options, as we know that there'll be more buildings coming on. So we really need to have some more tools that we can use to protect the rental stock. So I'd like to see this report as soon as we can have it.
Okay, someone like to make the motion? I think they know what we're looking for in our conversation.
Okay, so just asking for the report without all the bits? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll move that council direct staff to prepare a report to Cumberland with options for residential rental tenure zoning.
Seconder? Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried. Next is the museum lease. The council received the museum lease report. Councillor Kettler, Councillor Sullivan, all in favor? Carried.
Council, staff is bringing this report on the museum lease to you to get some direction and approval for some of the terms of the draft lease. Council saw this lease at its meeting in the first meeting in October. And since that time, staff have gone ahead and done the statutory publishing of the statutory notice to dispose of the property. And that included a term of up to 15 years. So we've taken care of that piece. So since that time, we've been working with the executive director of the museum and working out some of the details of this lease. And one of the things that comes into play is the renovation project, especially in terms of the two sections of the lease that we've been discussing with the museum, and those are the termination clause and the actual term of the lease. So Councillor Brown actually asked the question earlier today about the details of that project, and I thought it would be worthwhile to review that a little bit with you before discussing those terms of the lease. So the Museum Society came to council in August, so I'm just going on the information that was provided at that time. So the project has three components to it. It's the physical improvements to the interior of the building, the enhancements to the building environment to increase operational efficiency and capacities, and enrichment of exhibitions and increased access to museum collections. So the interior building improvements are things like new flooring, painting, improving the mechanical, or actually redoing the mechanical and electrical systems of the building itself. Enhancement to the building environment is constructing an accessible bathroom for the public. Right now, we share the use of the washroom in the cultural center foyer through the elevator. Also separate office spaces, relocation of the research room for access to the archival collection, and also increased storage space. So the budget at the time that was presented, the construction itself was valued, the budget was $600,000. The exhibition improvements was $30,000, and the collection storage improvements was $45,000. So you can see the significant majority of the project goes towards the building itself. And I think that was one of Councillor Brown's questions. So I think the budget remains the same. I didn't get a chance to confirm that today, but from the information I saw that Rosalind provided, it is in that area of $750,000 for the whole project. So going on to the two main items that we've been discussing with the museum. The first is the termination clause, and this included in the draft was a section that the village could terminate the lease without cause with a 12-month notice period. And that presents a problem for the museum based on the significant investment they're making to a village asset, that the village could give notice at 12 months and ask them to go. So one thing, we did get legal advice, and I'll let you know that we were advised not to remove that because that would impact the village's ability to manage its asset and limit future council's ability to manage the museum and other facilities. So that facility. So they have the museum has asked that be removed, but there's another couple of components there that we could combine that with to give maybe more security to council, including the reviewing the termination due to default. She did mention that section in the draft lease could use some reworking to provide more security. Right now, it basically says that if the tenant doesn't fully observe the terms of the lease, that they would be in default and the village could terminate that. But she did advise that we could work on that section a little more to tighten it up a bit. So the second area is the term of the lease, and originally the draft was written out as 5 years, and that's a standard 5-year agreement. That's pretty typical for local governments. The museum came back and asked for 10 with an option to renew, and when we brought this to council, we suggested just 15. We'll make the notice for 15 to give us some wiggle room in there. So with the removal of the termination without cause, staff is recommending that we go back to a 10-year term and with the option for a 5-year renewal if it's agreeable to both parties. So both parties would have to agree to go that extra 5 years. So if the village didn't want to go 5 years, you could cut it off right there. So those are the big issues for discussion. The council report does go through quite a number of smaller details of the lease that we need to clean up a little bit in regards to insurance and the actual area of the building that is to go to the museum, and changes to the shared area, and a bit about rentals. The museum would like to have some private rentals, so we need to clean those pieces up a little bit. The third part of the report, we're looking, because time is of the essence for the museum to get this lease completed, and it's been delayed, unfortunately, with the village having other priorities, is to use council's delegation to the chief administrative officer to allow staff to work with the museum to come to some agreeable terms on those smaller items. But we're still looking for council's approval of those two more significant pieces of the lease. So we're happy to answer any questions or further discussion with council tonight.
Okay, we'll go around the table again. Councillor Kettler, we'll start with you.
Oh, yay. I mean, I think, you know, we've had a really good relationship with the museum. I think we were all really excited when the Young Foundation first proposed the upgrades to both the exterior and interior of the building. And we did dedicate some funds to help with that at that time. Since then, you know, not really through any fault of their own, due to, you know, further research into the building's capacity, none of that external stuff and the whole new room that was supposed to be on the front of the building can't happen. So yeah, the upgrades will only be those interior ones mentioned, and that's significantly less than what we had hoped for. There are a number of concerns I have with what's proposed here. I of course don't feel great about giving up the termination clause, especially against legal advice. And then I wonder about they want to reduce the liability insurance from 5 million to 3 million. But at the same time, they're asking to do more rentals and have more private events in there. So that, to me, it doesn't really make sense that you would be reducing your liability, but increasing the amount of events in that building. So that's another area I don't agree with. But of course, you know, the museum is our long-term partners, and I certainly want to work with them well into the future. So I don't mind having a fairly lengthy lease agreement with them, but I think we need to better represent some of the village's interests within this contract.
Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, I don't know if I could say it better than that. I completely agree with Councillor Kettler. And just to reiterate, yeah, I'm in favor of the 10-year lease for sure, just because of the great relationship we've had in the past and moving forward. Yeah, and I support the CAO trying to work out some of the smaller details also as well. But I'm not really super into going against legal advice either. That never seems to be a smart idea. But maybe if there's some wiggle room in the middle of that we can reach a compromise, I'd support that.
Okay. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I have some concerns as well. The building is a village asset. We are undertaking a facilities review in the next year, and I agree that the museum has been an amazing partner and we don't ever want to move them, but should we have to, we kind of need that option. So I'm definitely not in favor of taking out the clause 33, the termination. We could talk about we could extend it to 60 days notice or something like that. And I understand that the Huang Foundation wants to ensure that they're getting the value over time of their investment into the building. So I appreciate the request for the security, but I think we've given that with the 15-year lease. And I think our relationship proves that we are not intending to move them, that they are quite secure there, and that we appreciate everything that they're doing to the building to improve its quality. So I'm happy to let the CAO sort that out with perhaps more legal advice as needed.
Councillor Spruill?
Yeah, well, it was disappointing when we found out that there couldn't be another building, that the space capacity was not going to be able to be increased. But I think what is going on with the changes of the displays, the updating of everything, there was so much that needed to do. And it's great that a benefactor has come forward, and we want, I don't know about the legal stuff. I think we need to definitely have more discussion about whether we should take that clause out. But I think we should do whatever we can do to make each side feel comfortable with what the agreement is going to be. And I think we've always had a good open communication with the museum. So I think once we get the legal stuff sorted out, I would be prepared to give them a longer lease. Just depends on what advice we get.
Mm-hmm. My concerns are the same as everybody else's, especially the legal advice telling us that for no cost. I think that we have a good relationship with the museum, and I'm sure that will continue on into the future. And who knows what's going to happen in the future? They might want to leave if we have something else, you know, and I think that ties our hands to look at other options in some respects. And so I would like to see it more discussion and see if we can come up with a solution for this. I also think that it's wise not to decrease the liability if there's more events going on in that facility, because that opens it up, because you know the village will be named, and we've learned that over the years. So I think that we need to remember that we are a community that feels very deeply for our museum, and we're very proud of it, and we're going to be prouder of it once this work is done. And it will bring us up to the day and age that we should be at. And so I thank him for wanting to be part of that, bringing us into the 20th century, they say, or the 21st, whatever. But yeah, I think it can be worked on. So someone would like to make the motion that's there or change it?
Your worship, just
yes.
Corporate Officer, did you?
Yep. If Mayor Baird, if I may speak to some of the questions and discussion, I'll take the easy ones first on the insurance. One thing that we look at is when we look at insurance for third parties and users of village facilities, is we have a risk rating that we assess the activities of an organization, and I did look at that when the museum, I think the museum's insurance, liability insurance is 2 million, and they agreed to move it up to 3 million. I think over the longer term of the lease, we might look for some advice as to, you know, as the years go on, that we may have to raise it up a bit. But the activities that the museum undertake they're not high risk activities. That's why we agreed on the 3 million. You know, they're not mountain biking events or any high risk activities like that. In regards to the rentals, Roz and I did discuss that, and especially in regards to if there was liquor served at these events, and they would do the same as the museum does. They put those requirements for insurance onto their renters. You know, if you want to hold an event, the renter needs to provide an insurance policy that covers both the museum and the village, so that risk is addressed there. In regards to the removal of the termination without cause, I can tell you that the museum's position is basically if that clause remains with the 12 months notice in effect, it could turn it into a 12-month lease if the village acted on that termination. And you know, it is a negotiation between the two parties for sure, but I think you know, with the discussions I've had with the museum, there and that uncertainty for that financial contribution, there may be some consequences, and some just not having that security of the use of the building for the long term might be a challenge for such a huge, big financial contribution towards a village asset. So, you know, again, it is a negotiation, and if council asks us to go back to have more discussions, we'll definitely do that. But they might not be too easy. But again, there is that advice, and the lawyer did say to me that that's advice she would give anyone for any kind of lease. But the decision in this case, she did mention that it is a political decision, and that's why we brought it to you based on the relationship of the two parties, the long-term relationship, and the flexibility the village wanted to have in managing that asset. So what I'm hearing is it's fairly important to council to have that flexibility. We could look at those alternatives like the 60-month notice, the 5-year notice on that, which would give the museum 5 years security on that lease for their investment.
I was just looking for that in there, and I was going to recommend that maybe we change the 12 months to 60 months. And then they're guaranteed for 5 years that we're not going to do anything. Clayton, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So certainly the corporate officer and I've had a couple of conversations about this. It is not unusual not to have that this clause in long-term leases for facilities such as museums, archives, other like facilities that are long-term type of thing. So what our legal counsel did provide is what would be like the corporate officer says, what would be preferred. However, council, there is enough mechanisms within the lease that would allow, you know, if there was any issues relating to them not fulfilling their requirements within the lease, there is termination with cause, you know, within that. So there is protection for the village through that. I think, you know, there is one of the things that's a challenge for a situation like the museum is it is difficult for them to apply for grants when they don't have, when there is only a 12-month or the ability that a lease could be withdrawn in the sense of close off. So they do struggle in the sense of when they put these, because that is part of long-term applications is when they apply, they need to demonstrate that they have a long-term agreement. And that is one of the considerations that is a challenge for them. So I just wanted to, you know, let council know that certainly there are mechanisms that if needed, you know, with cause, there's certainly ways to for these leases to end. Certainly that's not the intent here. Go into a lease like this is about longevity and the to help support the museum and in the community. But you know, at the end of the day, the without cause is certainly like our legal counsel says, it's preferred, but it's not a necessity at the end of the day that would not allow us the flexibility to do what we need to do. So I know that's a bit gray, but I think it's about relationship and about what the long-term vision is there for council.
Okay, someone, yes, Councillor Sullivan? Your microphone.
If we go from a 15-year down to a 10 with an option for 5, is that going to make things more difficult, Rachel?
That was the term that was proposed by the museum initially.
Is the 15?
The 10 with the 5-year renewal.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I'm reading something different than on the motion. And the motion is just to make it for 15. Oh no, that's our previous direction. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Someone else? Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I think that I understand that we have options for if they're not following the terms of the lease or the with cause option out. But I think it's still important for us in a village with very minimal facility assets to maintain control over that asset, and I think we can work around the security with longer notice, and having a conversation about how long the benefactor feels he needs to get the value out of his investment and offer the security in that way, rather than pulling that clause or adding something to the clause. I trust that you guys can negotiate that.
Councillor Kettler, I see you shaking your head.
I was just going to propose that instead of approving the removal, that we approve the extension of the notice for the termination of lease without cause.
Okay, so would you like to make that a motion?
Yeah. Okay, I'll move that council approve the village entering into a lease agreement with the Cumberland and District Historical Society for the use of the museum building located at 2680 Dunsmuir Avenue for a 10-year term with a 5-year extension upon mutual agreement, and that council approve the extension of the, what did we say? Of the notice, the extension of the notice for the termination of the lease without cause clause, and that council direct staff to negotiate final terms of the lease for execution by the mayor and chief administrative officer.
Second that.
Second. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, we're into bylaws. Recommend that council receive the official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment bylaws for 4724 Cumberland Road, new fire hall site report.
Move receipt.
Second, Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you, council. These are the bylaws to change the land use designation and zone for the new fire hall site. Council held a public hearing on October 19th, I believe it was, and the record of that public hearing is attached here. So the bylaws are presented for third reading, but before council considers that, we're asking council to make a minor amendment to both bylaws to correct the civic address on the site. Initially the address was given at 5382 Cumberland Road, and then later on it was changed to be 4724 Cumberland Road to be more consistent with the addressing on that road. So the recommendation is there for you to consider. Thank you.
Any comments, or do you just want to make the motion? Okay, go for it.
Okay, will do. I'd like to make the motion that council amend the official community plan amendment bylaw number 1115/2020 in Schedule A and zoning amendment bylaw number 1116/2020 in Schedule A by changing the civic address of the subject parcel from 4382 to 4724. And further, that council gives third reading to official community plan amendment bylaw number 115/2020 as amended and zoning amendment bylaw number 116/2020 as amended.
Seconder,
Second.
Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried. Next, that council received the financial plan amendment bylaw report for information.
Move receipt.
Seconder, all in favor? Carried.
Okay, good evening again. So the purposes of this report is to present amendments to your 2020 to 2024 financial plan bylaw and to request that council consider the first 3 readings of this amendment bylaw. And I do apologize, there was an on table for this report so that because there was a couple of amendments that got missed, so I wanted to make sure that they were caught, and so that's what the on table is about. The amendment bylaw is based on council resolutions that have been made throughout 2020 for different various reasons. There's also a list of projects that needed to be carried forward from the 2019 year into the 2020 year. Normally I bring this to you earlier in the year, so this is a little bit late. And amendments that staff, other amendments that staff are recommending, and I'll go through those a little bit further as well when I get down there. There is attachment 1 to this report though, and so the first column of attachment 1 is actually your first, that is your 2020 year of your financial plan bylaw. That's what you adopted back in January of 2020. The middle column is actually what I'm recommending for your amendments to this financial plan that you've adopted. And then so the final column of the attachment is what the actual amended bylaw numbers would be if you approve the amendments here tonight. Okay, and so the report, starting on page 100, goes through all the different motions that council made throughout the year. Basically, you'll probably recognize most of them. It's just they've come from various reports that staff have brought forward asking you to for amendments and telling you why, and you've made your motions. So I've added those into your amendments bylaw. And then we come down to your carry forward projects. That's your attachment 2, is a list of those projects that were started in 2019 but didn't get done by the end of the year, so they're getting done in 2020. And then we have a few miscellaneous ones. There's your $10,000 to be funded by the Sewer Financial Stabilization Reserve, and that's for your sewer and storm infiltration and inflow investigations. So that was, for whatever reason, was missed in the 2020 financial plan. So we're asking if we can add that. And to not have that get missed in the future, what we did was we actually added it straight to the operating budget for your 2021 financial plan. And that way it just becomes part of the work plan. Have to be done every year. We're also asking for $6,500 to be funded by the General Financial Stabilization Reserve be added, and that would that's for procedures to be updated for confined spaces as per WorkSafe BC. And we have a couple of labor relations matters to be funded by General Financial Stabilization Reserve, and council is aware of both of these. We also we decide that our facility equipment in our buildings will get replaced if they fail, because there's not much of a risk for them if they once they fail, we can just replace them rather quickly. We don't have to have bad things happen. So the only thing that needed to be replaced in 2020 was the public works shop furnace. So that got replaced. So we're asking for a budget amendment of $4,200 to be funded by the general village asset replacement reserve for that. And the good news for that is that was a very old furnace. And so it was able to be replaced with a very high energy natural gas furnace. So we're seeing some savings, cost savings, and probably carbon savings. I haven't done the carbon inventory yet, but I'm assuming. Then finally, I'm asking for some reserve transfers. The $59,700 to the Emergency and Public Safety Reserve that you'll recognize from earlier in the year for growth taxes that hadn't been estimated yet. And then also, as per the reserve and surplus policy, amounts that are over the accumulated surplus fund optimum balances, we're asking to have those cascade into your stabilization reserves. And that's it. So there you go.
Questions? Councillor Brown, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm quite pleased that we're cascading our reserves. That we actually have some that have reached their goal, and that just makes me really happy. I don't have any other questions. Thanks.
Councillor Kettler.
No, me neither. Thanks, Michelle. Great job.
Councillor Spruill.
Wait.
No, you put your mind.
Yeah. No, thank you, Michelle. It's really clear. I'm glad you thought of all these. I mean, they sound like little bits and pieces, 4,200 and whatever, because we have some big ticket items. But there are a lot of small things that add up to quite a bit. And I think it's great. We're just catching up and putting them, sorting them out and finding a place to put them. And okay, that's good. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan.
No, nothing from me. If I'm to read this motion,
You go right ahead.
does this motion catch these amendments on the agenda motion, Michelle?
Yes,
Or do
they
I-
do. I made the changes to that bylaw. So if you give first,
Yeah.
second, yeah.
Okay, I'll move the council amend official community plan amendment bylaw number 1115/2020 in Schedule A and zoning amendment bylaw. Was that the right one?
Nope.
Sorry, Councilor Pro did that. That count.
7.2.
7.2. Yeah, I'm there. Sorry. The council give first, second, and third reading to the 2020-2024 financial plan amendment bylaw number 1139/2020. That was way easier.
Councillor Spruill, second. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations, Michelle. Not a question. Very good report.
Thanks.
Okay, that council received the 2021-2025 financial plan bylaw and 2021 utility fees bylaw report.
Move receipt.
Councillor Sullivan, second. All in favor? Carried.
Okay, so the purpose of this report is to actually introduce your financial plan bylaw for the 2021 to 2025 year now for consideration of first reading, and also your utility rates amendment bylaws for consideration of your first 3 readings. And so, we held a public meeting on November 16th, and there was lots of attendance. There was some questions at that meeting that staff answered, and I have also summarized in your report for your review, starting on page 115 of the agenda. And then we also had 2 written feedback forms presented, and those are also summarized in your report as well. I also added what the answers were given for some of the questions at the Village Hall meeting, and then I believe, yes, and then we also provided council during the weekly update the actual written feedback, that the full written feedback, so you got to read that. I can also answer some questions on those if you'd like, but I'll just keep moving on, and you can ask me some questions after if you'd like. We have also some choices here starting on the bottom of page 116, that if council wishes to make any changes to the attached bylaw, I would recommend that you follow that process. And if you do want to make some changes, just ask me for clarification on how you can make those if this isn't clear, and I can answer some of those questions as well. And then we just move on to basically the overall impacts of the proposed plan. It's not something that you haven't seen already, and you saw them in your committee of the whole meetings. Then I did present to the public on the full package on the Village Hall November 16th. So bottom line though, the average single family household would see an increase of $269, which is about $22 a month. The strata home would see a $236 increase, which is about $20 a month. And a commercial property would see about $471, which is about $39 a month. And then just something to keep in mind about your commercial properties and your other, a few other classes, is that in 2020, the province, subsidized those properties for the school tax portion and police tax. And so just to recognize that I don't know what the province is going to do in 2021 for those classes. But if they add back those taxes, people may think that that's an increase, but really it's just bringing their taxes back to the pre-COVID time, and then your increase would be on that. So it's just something to be aware of if people are really concerned. That's more than likely what happened, and maybe they'd forgotten that they received the subsidy. And then also the rate structure that we used for the utility amendments hasn't changed since 2017. So basically, we've just been slowly moving over to a frontage tax for your capital infrastructure replacement and utility fees for your operating costs. And then finally, we did talk to council a little bit about the COVID-19 recovery funding at the last meeting, that you have some choices that you might want to make with that in your taxation in the financial plan. And I do have, a couple of things that you might have wanted to do. It's if you use the COVID funding towards the interest reduction that we had to reduce in 2020 and 2021 and 2022 for the low interest rates due to COVID. Or we did have to increase the janitorial hours as well. So that would probably be eligible. So I did bring this up to you, and you had said that you didn't really want to make a decision on that, and asked if you could, if it would still be available. And I had mentioned at first reading. So that is, I can provide you with that information if that's of interest to you as well. And so basically on page 119 of the agenda, I just have a little chart in the middle there that talks about your different revenue source increases. So your property taxes, your utility fees, and your frontage or your parcel taxes. And so having said all of that, and you have seen this information before, I'm just recommending first reading of the financial plan bylaw and the first 3 readings of the utility fees.
Any questions from anyone? Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, so going back to the increased cleaning and possibly using some of the new grant funds that we got for those costs. What sort of difference does that make to the tax rate if we do? Because that's an ongoing increase in cleaning, right? So that would be continued throughout following years, not just a one-off. So
that's right. So, and you're just talking about just the janitorial then, is what you would like to see? And so then you would see just for the janitorial use, if you used all of it for 2021 in the COVID funds, you would have a reduction in your tax rate, your tax increase of 0.86. So so then 4.93 minus. So then you would knock your tax increase in 2021 down to 4.07% increase. And then you're looking at increasing that by about 0.08% the following year when you bring the revenue slowly in and keep using your COVID funds. And then 0.16% increase the years after that as they impact. And then that would be
Michelle, can you give us those what the rates would go up to while you're doing your computing there if we did it so 20, 21, 20, if we applied it for 2 years, say,
yeah,
and then what the rate, how much we'd have to raise the rate after that?
Yeah, so what I did was I sort of analyzed what it would look like if you did the whole amount in 2021 for COVID, and then you only use the COVID of 25 grand in 2022, and then you start using increments of 5 grand after that, like 20,000 in 2023, 15 in 2024, and then 10 in 2025, and you're done in 2026. And so you would see 4.07 in 2021, and then your increase would be 5% in 2022, 5.24% in 2023, 5.29% in 2024, and 3.89 in 2025. What those are, they're also in that chart on page 119 of the agenda, what the current rates are. And if you did that that way for the janitorial, you would spend just under $98,000 of the COVID money on your janitorial.
And what about, you said you prepared the, if we use the money on the, what we lost in interest rate?
Yeah, so what I had done was I had added it back in the 2023 year. So because I figured it would all be over by then. And so really you would only be covering it for 2021 and 2022. So if you added that to your COVID, use that as well. In 2021, your tax increase would be reduced by 1.2%. So you would then only be increasing your taxes by 3.73% in 2021 instead of 4.07. And then the increase is the same, as it's only the janitorial that has the impacts to the future years, because you're bringing those up.
Yeah. And if we just did the interest rate and not the janitorial, given that the janitorial is forever. Sorry.
That's okay.
She's with her calculator.
Yeah.
So that would be in 2021 and 2022. That would be a drop. For 2021, it would be 0.34% to that. So you're looking at you'd look at an increase of 4.59% in 2021 instead of 3.73 or 4.07.
Everybody thinking?
Yeah.
Oh, we have to make some decisions, so. Michelle, do you have any recommendation in that, in which way to go?
Well, I mean, a tax decrease is, you know, not increasing your taxes for people is always like, you know, helpful. It doesn't super impact the following years. So it's not a bad thing. I wouldn't have recommended it if you saw like huge increases to your following years, but yeah, it's I wouldn't not recommend it, I guess.
Oh,
Yes, Clayton.
yeah, just to provide a little background on that actual fund there. So we just I believe last week, the end of last week, did receive the payment, and so we will have for council on December 14th a report on various options for that fund there. So certainly council at the next council meeting will have some ideas of exactly what that looked like. However, the fund is designed for these type of things where there is a shift relating to COVID recovery, and these would fit within that criteria. And it really, I think, just to be clear, that the COVID fund is for the ability for the organization to stabilize through transition periods such as this. Like it is an organizational fund that the province has provided us here. It's a focus on helping us guide us through these difficult periods. And so we'll certainly have more information on the 14th, but in relation to this, I know the chief financial officer has, when we've spoken about this, it does fit within that criteria. So if council wishes, it certainly can be looked at. And being the first reading here, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, is the 14th, there may be some more information that you may want to consider. But if you give that direction, it allows us to begin this process here.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I feel like I would like to see the suggestions for the use of the rest of the fund before we allocate a huge portion of this to this piece. So I can we do first reading and then make some changes on the 14th if we see something different when the report on the other options for that fund, if that makes any sense, comes forward.
Well, the first part, it is just for the first reading. It's the second and third readings on the Watts utility rates.
Yeah, so I'm just clarifying that we can change our mind after first reading. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you have up until final adoption. Okay, so the motion is there. If you're in agreement to it, please put it out there.
That council give first reading of the 2021 to 2025 financial plan bylaw number 1138/2020. And that council give first, second, and third reading of water rates amendment bylaw number 1140/2020, sanitary sewer rates amendment bylaw number 1141/2020, solid waste rates amendment bylaw 1142/2020.
Seconder, Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much again, Michelle. Notice motions and announcements. Economic Development Steering Committee, December the 2nd at 6 p.m. Now, Rachel, is that by Zoom? Nope, she's gone. Is
Oh,
the economic
I'm never gone.
is the Economic Development Steering Committee meeting by Zoom?
Yes, it will be by Zoom.
Thank you very much. Now, question period. Anyone that has any questions, please email us at info@cumberland.ca using subject line question period. Thank you very much. Well, Council, lots of interesting decisions tonight. Some of them were very difficult. You did a good job.
Yeah.
It's hard to know whether we're really feeling the repercussions of COVID now, or whether we're going to feel it next year or the next, like when is that fallout actually going to be in place for people?
I had an interesting conversation with a business person on Sunday, and they said Saturday they had people in their business that they didn't recognize anybody. Sunday, it was all locals. So interesting, very interesting. And we're not through this yet.
Hi, Mayor Baird, we have no questions yet.
Okay. No questions yet. Does that mean we keep waiting? I'm sure they know where to find us if they want to have a question. So we will take a motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry, closed portion.
Yeah.
I'll move that council close and adjourn the meeting to the public pursuant to section 90 of the community charter to consider labor relations or other employee relations.
Seconder, Councillor Spruill, all in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Good. Thank you very much.